They
Okay.
can submit their questions in the chat.
Great. In the Q&A?
Yep.
Or in the chat?
In the chat.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the pre-proposal conference for RFP 87 FY23 for Secondary Spanish Resources. I am Danielle Godfrey, and I am the Assistant Director of Procurement for Arlington Public Schools. Also presenting or representing APS during the conference is Elizabeth Harrington, the Supervisor of World Languages. During the conference, the Secondary Spanish RFP, the Secondary Spanish Resources RFP will be reviewed. Questions are welcomed and will need to be submitted in writing through the Q&A capability. Questions will be addressed at the end of the conference. It needs to be emphasized that even though this conference is provided to help offerers gain a better understanding of the requirement, it remains the offerer's responsibility to be aware of the contents of the RFP. So this is Request for Proposals 87 FY23 Secondary Spanish Resources. The proposal due date and time is March 3rd, 2023, no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sealed proposals shall not be received in response to the RFP at Syfax Education Center by mail, express mail, in person, or by courier, but will do so instead electronically through a secure cloud-based file sharing platform. Firms wishing to submit a proposal in response to the RFP are required to upload the information requested in tabs 1 through 5 of Section 3, Proposal Requirements, into the platform through the link found on the current solicitations webpage under the Procurement Office website. A link is provided below. To assist offerers with its proposal submission, screenshots of the steps required to submit a proposal are attached as Appendix L to this RFP. For a proposal to be considered for award of a contract, the proposal must be received in the platform by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Friday, March 3rd, 2023. Offerers are strongly encouraged to submit their proposal in advance of the proposal due date. Proposals received after the proposal due date shall not be considered. The pre-proposal conference is the one that we're at right now. Minutes of the conference, including but not limited to questions and answers presented at the conference, will be issued in writing by the Procurement Office as an information item and distributed in the same manner as an addenda as set forth below. Questions must be submitted in writing via email addressed to myself and Elizabeth Harrington. Addenda. Changes to this RFP will be made only by written addenda issued by the Procurement Office and designated as addendum number. No other form of communication shall modify this RFP. Addenda will be posted on the link to the current solicitations page on the Procurement Office website and on the bulletin board in Syfax. Offerers shall ascertain prior to submitting a proposal that all addenda issued have been received and shall acknowledge receipt and inclusion of all addenda by marking which addenda and signing and the date with the proposal submitted. Questions received timely in response to this RFP, including those at the conference, will be answered by written information items issued by the Procurement Office. This RFP shall not be modified by an information item. Information items will only be posted on APS's website and on the bulletin board at Syfax. Please make sure that you read and check the information for trade secrets or proprietary information here. State Corporation Commission's SCC identification number. This is a mandatory requirement, and you will fill out this section here. Debarment. You will fill out that information there. Type of business. You will fill out the information under the type of business. You check yes or no. Ethics in public contracting, certification of non-disclosure are here. Include pages 1 through 5 of this RFP as the first 5 pages of the proposal response under tab number 1. This section is the special provisions for the RFP. APS is soliciting proposals from qualified offerers to...
Danielle, could I just have you stop for just a second and scroll back up to that table?
Sure.
I am going to be referring to that table, so just as people know, when I refer to that later, it's this table in terms of proficiency skills. So thank you, Danielle.
Okay, that's on page 9, so I'll scroll back up when you get there. Okay. APS is soliciting proposals from qualified offerers to establish a possible 7-year term contract with a minimum of 1 qualified offerer for Spanish levels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, AP Spanish, Language and Culture, AP Spanish Literature, and Advanced Studies of Spanish Resources for grades 7 through 12. All digital resources must be received by June 30th. All print resources must be received by July 30th, and the initial professional learning must be completed by August 30th, 2023. The scope of work. The purpose of this RFP is to solicit proposals to establish a possible 7-year contract term with a minimum of 1 qualified offerer for Spanish, secondary Spanish resources for grades 7 through 12 to satisfy the curricular needs for world languages. Additionally, all resources must be compatible with APS's current technological infrastructure. All mandatory requirements will need examples from offerers in the proposal. The offerer will designate the functional requirements that they provide in the proposal. A detailed table for each section is included in Appendix G. Tasks to be performed. Offerers shall remain in compliance with the required functionality criteria described in Part 2 of Appendix G, Technical Requirements, at the time of the contract award and throughout the duration of the contract term. That is this contract. At the time of the contract award, the contractor shall provide APS with online accounts allowing for designated APS employees to access the contracted resources for review and planning purposes. Technical proposal instructions are here. I have highlighted A, B, 1, 2, and 3. Please read that. Treatment of issues. Statement of qualifications, the organizational and staff experience. Please review that. References, personnel, resume of staff and proposed consultants. Escalation personnel, financial statements. Please read and review that information that needs to be a part of the proposal being submitted. The consultation services, and the cost proposal instructions. The offerer must submit a cost proposal in tab 3. The cost proposal should contain Appendix F pricing schedule, which identifies the contract price for each line item listed. APS requests the offerers to provide a 7-year subscription length in its cost proposal. Samples. Offerers who are selected to attend the shortlist interviews will be asked to submit samples at no cost to APS. Print versions of the proposed resources are the samples. Date resources are to be made available. The resources digital must be received by June 30th, 2023. The print resources must be received by July 30th, 2023. And the initial professional learning must be completed in August of 2023 by no later than August 30th, 2023. Information request. All questions relating to this RFP shall be submitted to myself and Elizabeth Harrington, the APS project manager for this RFP. Here is the tentative schedule. Proposal requirements are in this section. APS proposed contract documents and this RFP contain terms and conditions APS favors and intends to use for the resultant contract. If the offeror wishes APS to consider any changes to these documents, such changes must be submitted in writing in the proposal, and such exceptions shall be considered during negotiation. Format and contact, please read this and submit your proposal based on that format and content criteria. Offerers should organize their proposals using the following tabular format. Tab 1, Administrative. Tab 2, Technical Proposal. These are the items that should be submitted in Tab 2. Tab 3 will be the cost proposal, which offerers are asked to provide prices for a 7-year online subscription option. Tab 4 will be trade secrets or proprietary information. Tab 5 will be exceptions taken to any provision of the contract documents. Offerers are only to provide specific exceptions or proposed revisions to any provision of the contract documents to be added or removed in accordance with Section 5. Requests to enter into future discussions to seek clarification of any provision of the contract documents will not be considered in this section. Proposal evaluation process and method of contract award. A selection advisory committee, known as the SAC, will review and evaluate all responsive proposals received by the procurement office. The offerer shall state any exceptions to any provision of the contract documents in writing in its proposal as part of Tab 5. An offerer shall be deemed to have waived all objections to and accepted all provisions of the contract documents to which no exception is included in its submitted proposal. And in such event, no exceptions shall be considered during the negotiation phase. Any industry standard document the offerer requests to have included in any resulting contract shall be included in the offerer's submitted proposal. Any documents the offerer asserts is an industry standard document not provided by the offerer in its submitted proposal shall not be considered during the negotiation stage or otherwise, and shall not be a part of any contract awarded. After the SAC has completed its initial evaluations of the responsive proposals received by the procurement office, when applicable, it will select offerers to participate in the shortlist interviews, provide information that will clarify the offerer's proposal. Selection shall be made of 2 or more offerers deemed to be fully qualified and best suited among those submitting proposals on the basis of the evaluation criteria stated in the RFP. Negotiations shall then be conducted with each of the offerers selected. After negotiations have been conducted with each offeror selected, APS shall select the offeror which, in its opinion, has made the best proposal and provides the best value based on the evaluation criteria advertised in the RFP, and shall award the contract to that offeror. The evaluation process involves 3 stages: the initial evaluation stage, the shortlist interview stage, and the negotiation stage. Here are the evaluation criteria and the weight for each of the stages. Here are the contract terms and conditions of the resulting contract. Appendix A is the contractor's certification regarding criminal convictions. Appendix B is the conflict of interest statement. Appendix C is non-disclosure and data security agreement. Appendix D is the insurance checklist. That needs to be signed and submitted also. Appendix E is a sample form agreement. Appendix F is the pricing schedule. And there is a pricing schedule for professional learning. Offerors are to provide a description and the number of professional learning sessions included in the 7-year subscription. Any additional professional learning provided at a cost outside of the subscription shall be submitted separately. Professional learning is to be provided for an estimated number of 55 teachers. Here's a pricing schedule for additional resources. And for Appendix G, I will now turn it over to Elizabeth Harrington.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Harrington, Supervisor of World Languages. And just to make a note, when you do email me, my name is spelled the French way, Elizabeth with an S and not a Z. And I know that it is in the RFP, but I just wanted to make note of that as well. So the technical, the functional requirements, the resources submitted shall support vertical alignment for course levels 1 through AP level, and the offeror must provide at least one example to show how the proposed resources meets or exceeds the mandatory or desired requirements below. You will note that there are 5 sections. The first section is Section A, Spanish language acquisition, instructional resources. Section B is intervention and extension instructional resources. Section C are assessments, and Section D are values. Yes, and then the next section is professional learning. So examples, I want to go over a few things that are important. So if you could scroll back up to A. So it is important that the resources that are proposed align with the 2021 Virginia Standards of Learning for World Languages, and also align with the VDE proficiency goals by mode of communication. In other words, interpersonal, presentational, and interpretive. It is also mandatory that they be aligned with the ACTFL, which is the American Council for Teachers of Foreign Language, can-do statements. And levels 1 through 2 must develop and sustain foundational skills. For levels 3 and above, it must scaffold students' ability to create with language, and also provide opportunities. The resources must also provide opportunities for differentiation for special populations such as our gifted and advanced learners and students with disabilities. Note that in the boxes, you'll see so far we've only seen mandatory, but in some, as we move down, you'll see that there are some that are mandatory and some that are desired. We want the resources, it is mandatory that they be student-centered and user-friendly, intuitive digital resources that are updated throughout the term of the contract, with effective strategies that lend to target language input and output. In other words, what students can do with the language. The resources must have strategies for individual and cooperative learning and contextualized grammar that is embedded with key vocabulary building over time, not just lists of 50 vocabulary words. Proficiency-based communicative strategies are really important. In fact, mandatory. And level 1 through 4 scope and sequence must be explicit about the continuity of the resource, since this is a sequential elective. Under the next section for extensions, intervention and extension, it must include, actually, it may, this is a desired, may include a variety of assessments, formative, summative, that inform differentiated instruction, progress monitoring, and growth. In the next section, I talked about we want to know what students can do with the language and versus just what they know about a language. And so the Spanish resources must include performance assessment tasks for levels 1, 2, and 3. And then for level 3 and above, they must include performance assessment and integrated performance assessment tasks where the interpersonal, presentational, and interpretive are combined. In the next section, values, they must be culturally sensitive and free from stereotypes and bias. Also positive representations of the Spanish-speaking world and those that live there, and supports the inclusion of diverse voices and perspectives. And last but not least, in the professional learning section, in person at inception and virtual throughout the adoption for Spanish teachers on implementation of the product. And as the term of the contract continues on throughout the 7 years, the offer must provide several methods for teachers in addition to face-to-face. So online, tutorials, videos, webinars, and manuals. Thank you, Danielle.
Did you want me to go back up to page 9? Or are you okay?
When I spoke, just so long
About
as
that
people,
table?
yeah, just so long as people know it's there. So when I talked about the VDOE proficiency levels or standards of learning, yeah, if you want to go back to 9, what you'll note is that for a level 1 course, we expect the instruction to be at the novice mid-level. For level 2, at the novice high level. Presentational speaking is still at the novice mid, and level 3 at the intermediate low, which is really where students are starting to create with the language. And so this chart should really help offerers see if they are aligned with the VDOE, Virginia Department of Education, expectations for learning could be a second, could be a third, could be a fourth language, but for acquiring Spanish language.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me get back to that page. Okay. Appendix G is the technical requirements part 2. Please make sure you read that, review that. The following tables provides information on the technology environment and basic expectations maintained by Arlington Public Schools. The offering should be responsive to this environment and the noted expectations. The offerer should provide inline or reference documentation on how their offering would integrate with and function within this environment. Please note any deviation of claimed functionality between platforms or limitations of some platforms versus others. Note all offerings will interact with all platforms. Not applicable is a valid response. Use the following matrix to designate which options, controls, and attributes the offering has in relation to account management, authentication, and authorization. You may augment this matrix with detailed explanations of the specific entitlements or limitations of user roles defined in the offering. You must check which box you have. Each cell in the matrix may be blank, not available, or may contain an affirmation, including feature availability, or may contain a reference to more detailed elaboration. Provide multiple tables if the offering is comprised of multiple systems with different specifications. APS Service Provider IT Security Standards. The following table references information technology standards frameworks that APS considers potentially relevant to evaluation of vendors' offerings. So that will be here. Data and privacy information is here. Appendix H is the student data usage and privacy agreement that is required to be submitted with your proposal. You would sign and submit. Appendix I, the publisher's certification and agreement. This needs to be submitted with your proposal. The publisher's agreement needs to be signed and submitted. Authors, editors, and content review expert information. Appendix J, this also needs to be filled out and submitted. Appendix K is a sample purchase order that APS uses. And Appendix L is screenshots of the steps required to submit a proposal. And that concludes the pre-proposal conference for RFP 87 FY23. Let me see if there are any questions. I think the questions were from you, asking if everyone can hear. And I see a couple people said, yes, I can hear you.
Danielle, did you go to the Q&A versus the chat?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm in the queue. Yeah.
And
I can see your screen. I can hear. Appendix L is distorted. Instructions are not visible. I did receive a question like that. Maybe you need to reprint it or re-download it. I will see if I can maybe I could in an addendum submit another copy of Appendix L.
Danielle, it also looks like the next one is from Vista Higher Learning.
Yep.
And it says most of the RFP references a 7-year pricing.
Yep.
But on page 21, it says a 3-year digital cost is requested.
Yep.
Please clarify which pricing we want.
Yep, I went through that. And on page 21, I pointed out that it's a 7-year in the pre-proposal conference today.
Okay.
And
Also from in Appendix G, it requires screenshots, excerpts, and images, but some line items require documents, such as correlations. Would you like the entire document submitted? If a response needs an explanation versus a screenshot, how would you like that response entered in Appendix G? In what format do you want the evidence for Appendix G submitted?
So we don't have a specific format. We just need the information in its entirety from the proposer on how they are going to meet the requirements of the RFP. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Yes. So in other words, you're saying that it does not matter the format if they have additional documents, that those could be uploaded.
Yep, they just need to be submitted with the proposal in its entirety.
Also from Vista Higher Learning, how do you want evidence of the following item? Evidence from
Appendix G.
Yeah, alignment to VDOE proficiency goals by mode of communication, alignment to ACTFL can-do statements, inclusion of ACTFL 5Cs, inclusion of Virginia's 5Cs graduation. So, I mean, really, that would be up to the offerer, Danielle. They could submit a table if they so chose of where things are in regards to those pieces. I know the inclusion of the VA 5Cs, we put that as desired. The others are mandatory.
Okay. So it seems like, again, it's up to the offerer to get the information to us however they see fit in their proposal, that it meets the requirements, whether mandatory or desired.
With at least one example.
Yeah.
And please verify that you do not want any print samples unless we have been shortlisted.
Yep, I went over that during the evaluation criteria. It's only if offers are selected for the shortlist interviews will they be requested to submit samples.
Because the district already has an active contract and DPA, we will assume that all terms and conditions will remain in effect with any new adoptions. If not, we will have to renegotiate the previous terms and conditions for programs already in use.
So I think there's some confusion here because the terms and conditions are only for RFP 87 FY23 that we're going through right now. We're not speaking about any other contracts with any other offerers, only for the secondary Spanish resources that are being solicited under RFP 87 FY23.
Thank you. And Appendix L is distorted. We've addressed that.
Yeah.
On page 12, item 3C and 3D, don't know if you want to go there. Please explain the distinction of who you want included for each item. We think you want anyone working on our response to the RFP to be included in 3C, but you want the staff and consultants who will be working directly with the district listed in 3D. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe the request is for any staff, any consultants, any references. That is all in that request for information. So submit all of that information under that tab. Whether it be the ones that are working specifically with the district on this contract or any other members of personnel that need to be included in the proposal, I would just respond to that request.
Okay. And are digital signatures acceptable?
No, they are not.
Okay.
You can scan, you can handwrite, you can hand sign and scan it in, but a digital signature is not acceptable.
Okay. And Luis has a question. His services would be remote, not face to face. Is this a problem? So I think Danielle, would that be listed as under the exceptions if a person does not meet all of the?
Right. So throughout the document, it would specify whether there is a need to have in person. And I think your professional, in the professional learning part, it would be, that information would be there if it's deemed to be in person or not. So I'm assuming the question is about professional learning because it says my services would be remote. So Luis, just go back to the professional learning session. I mean, the professional learning tab, and it would specify if those sessions need to be in person or not. I believe the cost proposal has the offerer indicate which would be in person and which would be virtual. Okay,
Danielle,
sorry,
Danielle, we do put that the initial one would be face to face as
okay. Okay, thank you.
as a mandatory, and so that is, I think the question is, can a person put forth an exception to what is considered mandatory?
Yes, they can submit exceptions to any provision in the document that they would like us to consider.
And I answered privately for the signature. Somebody just didn't hear that your response of digital signatures are not allowed. However, you can sign something, scan it, and send it in that way.
Okay.
Unless anyone has any additional questions, that is all I see in the Q&A.
Yep. So all of these questions will also be answered in either an information item or an addendum following this conference. Thank you all for attending today's conference.
And we look forward to seeing the proposals.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.